ready to record.
Yeah. This meeting is in progress. I'm really sorry to anybody who's American, and that was a terrible accent.
So we're just saying today where to start with tracking progress in scale weight. And I think the decision is that we'll start by talking a bit about how weight loss can affect a prep, how the different emotions connected to weighing yourself can really be a massive part to any diet, but also, you know, with a prep, because you are digging that little bit deeper than a conventional diet. The stresses on the body can have such a big influence on what happens with the scale weight, and consequently that can then end up quite a mind warp as to how you feel your progress is going when you are in a stage prep.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's kind of getting to perspective that in a prep, your weight loss is just one aspect of your progress. That yes, we have to keep an eye on the scale, but in many cases, particularly from a body composition point of view, it's actually got to be in tandem with the visual perception of the physique's loss. Like, how does the body composition look? Where is the fat distributed on the frame, and how is the body shaping up in tandem with the number on the scale? And it's quite interesting because the two can be quite different at times.
Yeah, because scale weight in itself, like we've mentioned before, it doesn't have to be the only thing you use to monitor your progress, but it is definitely something that, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a very reliable source of it should be going down if you're particularly in a contest prep. Now, when you do have fluctuations and it's not linear, which it very rarely is, it doesn't then mean you're not progressing. And that's when you can rely on things like your photos, your measurements, etc. more. You know, if for a couple of weeks your weight might it'll either, you know, stay the same, or it might slightly go up and you think, oh my God, what's happening? But then if you can feel your body is, say, tighter, you might have been training more and there could be more inflammation, which is causing weight gain, or, you know, all of those different factors that come in. But if you look and feel leaner, then if it's for 2-3 weeks, you can ride that out normally. But if it then, you know, if it continues and your scale weight starts going up, then it may mean, you know, you do need to review what you're doing and if the stage prep is going in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is quite specific to each individual how they like to track weight. Like, I've got some clients who weighing themselves really motivates them. So the taking the number on the scale, so I have two systems I use. I have an average across the week, so I take averages maybe 3 or 4 times across the week to see the patterns of weight changes throughout the month. And then I have the clients that don't like to weigh averages across the week and like to only take one at the end of the week, for example. And then I've got some clients as well who earlier on, maybe in the prep, not so much the later stages, but we may take a weight back off a little bit to allow the mind just allowed to tick the boxes and come back to the weight. But as long as we are checking on photos every week, that we can kind of see that. And it really does kind of depend on the type of person you are, because if you're weighing yourself and it motivates you in a positive way, then there's not really any reason to change what you're doing. But if you're weighing yourself and, say, the number on the scales is making you feel like a failure every week, or that you're feeling kind of up and down and it's really demotivating you, and you can't see perspective of your photos, it can be detrimental to your enjoyment of the whole process. So it's finding where you are on that extreme. Are you extreme here, you want to weigh, or you extreme over here and you don't want to weigh, and trying to find a happy medium somewhere in the middle.
I guess from a coach's point of view, I get the impression from sort of Stephen that if I can do my weight and he's got that, it does make things a little bit easier when he's looking at all avenues of data. So you got your photos, your measurements, your weight, how the client is feeling. The weight can then add to the toolkit, and if, you know, the client or the person in prep is seeing it objectively, it can be a very useful tool. I definitely try, and if I have a conversation with someone that I'm working with that's trying to lose weight and they say, I really don't like the scales, over my time with them, I do try to sort of persuade them to use it as, this is the number I'm going to send Sarah, rather than I haven't lost weight if that number has changed. If they can see it as, that's a number, record it down, move on, and try and just work on different ways to be able to incorporate it, because it can be a very useful tool. But like you say, if it's causing distress, then there is other avenues.
Yeah, totally. It's an interesting one because obviously in contest, but if we're taking contest prep and isolation for a sec, you start here and you need to get here.
Yeah.
And that means fat loss and the figure on the scale going down. What I always have a bit of an issue with, sometimes people will come and go, right, my last stage weight, so say you're sitting 64 kilos now, and your last stage weight was 53, 54 kilos, say, then they're already coming in with a perception they have to hit that 53 or 54.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is just not the case at all, because maybe they were sitting at 53, 54 on a much less muscled frame and perhaps not looking as conditioned as they should be, or maybe they're too conditioned, who knows. But the fact is that every prep is going to be very different, and you may be the same weight when it gets down there, you may be less, you may be a little bit more if you've gone on a really good muscle off-season building phase, for example. And that it's important to have a kind of, I think, a little bit of flexibility around the end point, because a big question I get is, what weight do you think I'm going to be on stage? Do you think I'm going to be this weight? Or what weight should I be trying to shoot for? And I've always got to be really like specific with that question, depending on the individual, of course. That if you shoot for a figure, for example, and you're not ready, then it's been a pointless exercise. Do you know what I mean? You've got to
mind warp.
Yeah, and that's then when, of course, as the weights come down, and you're absolutely right, Sarah, it's never linear. It's, you know, I have I've drawn it on a piece of paper to show people that, you know, weight loss kind of goes like down a little bit, up, spikes, down, comes down, maybe plateaus for a few weeks, comes down, comes back up, plateaus, down, you know, and it goes like that. That's when you jump in with the photos, and if the photos are telling the right picture, then you need to either slow or speed up weight loss depending on the progress over time. And then the number will be what it will be to get you in the best place possible. And that's where the kind of the trusting eye of somebody can come in and say you're either over dieted or you're not quite there yet.
Yeah, because like you said there, it's such a common thing to compete and then have that weight in your mind that that's always going to be your stage weight. And I personally can back up that is not the case, because funnily enough, your example there, so I got to like 53 when I first competed with no muscle, and now my aim is not between 56 and 58, so that's like 5 kilos potential there. And you know, some people would be going, bloody hell, you know, I can't even imagine that. But I had no muscle at all.
Yeah.
And you realize actually, you know, I was actually borderline too lean and what have you. So those 5 kilograms bring the, you know, physique that I need to present to be able to do well in the sport and in my category. But it's not something you would really know until you compete multiple times.
100%. And actually, this is a really good point. See, for anyone listening, a lot of the time, girls, particularly, like competitors, will compare. They'll be chatting on message or whatever, and will compare like, oh, how, you know, where are you? Like, how many more kilos have you got to lose? Or how much more have you got to go? Or where are you going to be sitting? And I'm sitting about here. Now, you've just said, right, that in your first year, lacking muscle, you were sitting at about 52 kilos. Me, in 2019, in the best shape of my life for my pro show, 52 kilos.
Yeah.
So I was sitting at 52 in 2019, jacked and lean.
God, that's amazing, isn't it?
It's mental when you think about this. Now, if you and me were having this conversation, you're like, oh my God, are you getting ready for a show? What sort of weight do you think you're going to be? And you're sitting there saying 52, and I'm sitting there saying 52. Look at the differences in that picture.
Yeah.
And your height is, what's your height, Sarah?
Yeah, so I'm like nearly 5'6".
Yeah, so you're 5'6". I'm just over 5'2" in a bit.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm a wee thing and you're slightly taller, and our structures, our body frame, forget like the muscle and the fat and everything else, just bone structure has a weight.
Yeah.
And whatever that weight is, it comes, you know, obviously your muscle, your fat, your water, all of that. But you're never, ever, ever going to have the same amount of clear understanding of your weight and what it should be by speaking to somebody else, even if they're actually roughly around the same height as you. because everything is relative to the body around bone structure, you know, obviously how much your muscle weighs, how much muscle you have, how much fat distribution you have. So it's a really complex topic. And I think a lot of females in particular see other people's weight loss as like as a representation of their own, when it's very, very different. And I guess that's where I'm going with this comparison between you and I. It's just like crazy to think it.
I can't believe that.
I'm tiny. Like, I'm sitting here right now at 64 kilos. So it's like, I'm not a heavy person, but then looking at somebody, you might think, oh, they're really heavy. They're really muscular. They must be really heavy.
And it's definitely, it becomes that, you know, if you've got a number in your mind and you're not careful, you become obsessed with, am I behind? Am I this? Am I that? Da, 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 da. And actually, like you say, when you get down to competition lean, you could be a hell of a lot heavier, but it doesn't mean that you're not in the right place for where you need to be for your next competition. If you've done an off season or whatever you've done in between that phase, you know, it's amazing how much, if you gain muscle, how much that's going to change your stage weight.
Hugely. And I think your actual gain there between your first prep and then ongoing, and you said it was about 5 or 6 kilos difference.
Yeah.
From somebody moving from bikini, early stages of bikini through to get to your level, I'd say that's actually quite a good example of a good trajectory of where you should be at. Because if you look at your frame now and you've got this lovely pop muscle, you've still got that streamlined bikini look without it kind of going too far the other way, that's a really good amount of muscle tissue to retain that look. And that would roughly equate to that, I'd say. Yeah, it is a real interesting topic. And I guess everybody's got to be mindful that in comparison to weight loss or comparison to frames and what weight you're sitting at isn't a direct sort of
relation to your
reflection on exactly. Yeah.
And also the difference between a prep and a conventional diet is extremely different. When, you know, when people start saying to me, you're right, you're looking a bit, for us, that's like, okay, well, I'm on track then. Because in normal life, you're meant to be looking, you know, when you're at the tail end of a prep, I think it'd be silly of you to think that you're going to look an overall picture of health, if you know what I mean, in an objective way. You know, the last 3-4 weeks of a prep, you see that difference in your face, in your physique. You know, you feel lean most of the time. Everything is different, and it's getting your head round that, you know, if people do make those comments and if you do feel a certain way because you haven't done a prep before maybe, and you know, this is your first time at getting truly stage lean, it's remembering that when you do then get on the stage and whatever your weight is on that day, you're going to look appropriate to what you need to for a contest. This like last bit of a prep, like what I'm in, you know, it's not really a reflection of show day either, is it? You know, there's that added complexity of scale weight.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I say to a lot of my athletes, kind of at the time where you're at right now, where your mind's starting to play tricks on you a little bit, I often say, remember, you're not on stage today. You're not on stage today. Your fluctuations are going to be quite a lot at this point. You may actually find as well that you have a little bit of plateau at this point too. And there's things that kind of, you know, you'll have a couple of weeks where it's all gravy and you're going down, and you'll have a week and it's not, and you'll have a freak out and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm not going to be ready. It's part of that process, but you're not on stage today. So don't worry. It's all part of the bigger picture. And also, I think something on that point there that you just made, what people don't realize is that, or forget maybe, is that when you're losing weight, that can actually make weight loss harder as you get more lean. So at first your body's really happy and healthy and you're walking around and you've got, you know, a bit of body fat, you're a bigger person, you expend more energy because you're a bigger body and you need more energy to move around and do, and you know, all of that. And then as you of course are coming down, your body is naturally just going to expend fewer calories because you're a smaller person. So something many people don't often think is coming to the latter stages, you might not see the bigger chunks that you might have lost earlier on. That those little 0.2, 0.1, 0.3, they still are really quite important at that phase. So
It's just remaining objective, isn't it? And it's so much
Yeah.
easier said than done, you know, like we can sit here and be like, oh, but when you get on the scales for a few days in a row and they are slightly going up or they're staying the same, it's just like, oh, why is this happening to me? I've been losing weight every week. Everything's going really well. I'm ticking the boxes, as we call it. I'm doing everything to the absolute letter and my weight has gone up. I mean, I guess we could actually touch on some of the factors that cause sort of, I always say superficial weight gain, but you know, things like sodium. You know, maybe we can touch on a few of those for the listeners as to, especially first timers, these are things that you maybe not come across as to what could be potentially bringing your scale weight up temporarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a little break there. Hope you can still hear me. I paused a second. Yeah, superficial weight's a good way of putting it, I think, because gosh, I could reel off.
I don't feel like it's like real weight. So, you know, like my best example is it was years ago with Stephen. I had a conversation as to my scale weight's gone up, and I'd had sushi. And it was the night before, and then for a couple of days scale weight was up, and then he was like, well, that would be the sodium in the sushi. And I was like, sodium, like what do you mean? Is that just salt? And it's basically, isn't it, a preservative that's used in a lot of things like sushi to keep it fresh and edible and what have you. And then when you actually look at what has sodium in, there's a lot of things that you would never even equate to that causing your weight to spike for, you know, 1 or 2 days.
Yes, absolutely. Like sodium, well, higher level of salt intake, not balanced with water intake that you might not have thought about even at the time, can cause holding water, of course, which is why your weight would go up. Other things as well, like that you find in things like, you know, all your skinny sauces or any sort of like sauces that are additives, there's just so much in them in terms of polyols and things that if you have an excess or a lot of can really mess around with the digestive system and cause quite a lot of discomfort there. But also, again, coming back to water retention or poor digestion, which then, if you've not been to the bathroom very much that week, can also alter your weight. So there's like quite a few things there. Other things as well, just like say you've gone and really thrashed your heavy sessions throughout the week, your muscle recovery is delayed. DOMS, as we know, is a subcutaneous fluid across the board of your muscles, you know, in terms of trying to recover. That's also inflammation in water. Gosh, what else? Poor sleep.
Yeah. And obviously the big one, stress.
Correct. Cortisol. Ding.
The thing is as well, sometimes you can feel okay and you feel like, you know, I'm in control of stuff and whatever. And Stephen and I often talk about this, but you've got some quite monumental things happening in your life. Maybe you're changing your job, you're going through a breakup, you've got a family member that's ill, something like this. And you're quite rational about it in your mind. You can be matter of fact, okay, this is what's happening, this is what I'm doing to manage that stress. But then for some, you know, internally, the body's like, no, there's a lot of stress going on. And you're thinking, I'm fine. And then, you know, you can see the scale weight go up and it's like, but I feel fine. And, you know, no matter what we do, there's so many stresses in life, like the example of, you know, a family member being unwell. That happens so regularly to so many people. You know, I've recently had it, and so many people I know, there's always something going on in the background, isn't there? And something that I think we can underestimate as humans and also as bodybuilders, that you are allowed to have, you know, emotional things going on, and that sometimes reflects in what your body does as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, cortisol is a really funny one because
very complex, but not.
Yeah, because obviously we need the stress hormone in a positive way to do what we need to do, to actually perform at the level we need to perform at, particularly if you're doing something as extreme as like a contest prep, because very often you're doing 2 blocks of exercise a day if you're doing your morning cardio and then you're going and doing your session at night. And there's an element of like your body stress is getting you through that. And then you kind of got cognitive stress, like your personal stress of things that are coming in like that. And you exactly as you've described, you may seem like you're absolutely fine, but actually your anxiety level, instead of it being here, it's kind of here. but because you're doing so much, you're probably putting it to the back of your mind because you're focused on this over here, and that's there sitting there going, oh my god, like life's gone a bit mental, but I'm just going to deal with it, it's fine because I'm over here doing this. And it is exactly that. It's just sometimes you have to take a little step back. Like I had a client just kind of give a bit of a study on that one recently, who was going flat out. She's insane, beautiful shape, coming in for her show. I mean, honestly, it's about 15 kilos off her so far. She's been a year in the making towards this. She's working her way down, and she just on her check-in was like, Steph, like, I need a break. I'm really done in. I didn't realize it, but I think it's caught up on her. It caught up on her and kind of creeped up, and she woke up one morning. She was quite upset. She was low, and she was having that kind of suppressed hormone feeling that you can get through, you know, obviously we've spoken about this before, but she just needed to switch off for a bit. We took a diet break and we've taken a week or so off, and it's done her the world of good. But it's exactly that. Where cortisol's just gone, hi, I'm here. I need to just tell you that I'm here right now, because if you don't actually acknowledge me, I'm not going to do what I need to do in this body.
It's so annoying though, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is the psychology side of it, isn't it? That's where your Stephen, or with my guys, me and Andy, come in and say, this is perfectly normal, this happens. What's going on in your life right now? Let's see if we can unpick it. Let's see if we can rationalize it and put it in boxes and help you maybe manage it better. Because I guess this is where we go into the contest prep. Is a very intimate process that does take into consideration all the other areas of your life, because in order to get there, you need to manage all of this stuff too. People don't talk about that.
No, and this is one of our big reasons for even doing the pod, isn't it? You know, I find every prep, it exposes things that sometimes I'm, you know, hand on heart, I'm not ready for. And you know, these things come up that have potentially come up in the past, but of a smaller nature, and it's been much more easy to sort of digest what's happening and be a bit more objective with it. But then, you know, every prep, it seems like I have some sort of, I call it an epiphany, almost a revelation as to something that I maybe want to change in my life, or, you know, something that I could do better, or, you know, areas that I want to improve. And it is quite scary, because when you're in a deficit as well, you're in a sensitive position, aren't you?
I mean, you can have some real light bulb moments when you're in a prep, where you just go,
I know you have as well, haven't you? Like, oh shit.
I mean, like, you recognize things that either you need to do some deep work on in terms of yourself, and like you say, that can kind of be, you are in a compromised position at that point, because you are lower, like you're hormonally a bit more suppressed too. So you can, I wouldn't say it's the best time to make huge life changes, but it's maybe definitely a part of the processes where you can kind of maybe see the things that you don't need and the things that you should be focusing on.
I think a good rule of thumb for me in the past has been, allow it to highlight things, and then when I've done my show, you know, like you say, don't make a massive life change just there. Do the show, have a bit of time after, maybe a week or so. Then start making your movements as to where you feel you need to direct your energies.
Well, I mean, we've probably touched on these sorts of things before, but like a big one of that kind of, I often think preps really do highlight your relationships around you, really do. And that I've seen, not just in myself in past relationships, but athletes that I work with, or even just friends of mine that compete, that have realized that maybe they're not in the right relationship, or maybe they are, and the support has been so overwhelming that they've not seen it before, and it's kind of could go both ways, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's either full like, oh my god, appreciation, I can't believe I can see this in this person and I haven't appreciated it before, or it's the opposite, like this person doesn't support me at all and is a completely horrible person, who knows? I don't know.
and also it can be that, you know, I think when you're bodybuilding and you're doing a prep and you become so hyper focused and productive, you can sort of you unravel all these traits that you, if you're a first timer, maybe didn't know you were so good at. So you didn't know you could do time, time your schedule. You didn't know you could be that productive. You didn't know you had this many ideas for business, this many, and then it's like you're leaving your partner behind.
Yeah.
Because you become this like Duracell bunny. I want to take on the whole world.
Yeah.
But
It's
and
so true.
I would express that is very normal,
Yeah.
We've both been there.
It is so normal. And I think as well, like, I don't know, I think, well, I mean, we've kind of spoken about this as well, but when you're in prep, you kind of want to be in a reasonably balanced place so that there isn't anything too crazy that could topple you off the goal as well. So I suppose that comes into it. And all of these things are stress induced, which will have an impact on your weight loss, on your eventual goal. But I guess the overarching thing is to try and remember.
We're saying there, it's all of these things contribute to, you just would not believe that these things contribute to scale weight.
No.
It blows my mind still, even though with us, the experience between us that we've got, I'd imagine when you do your next prep, you'll still face these things where you look at the scales and you think, what is going on?
Yeah. And you do. And also there's a pre if you've done a prep before, you're always kind of going into it. And I think, everyone does this. They think, depending on the kind of experience they had with their last one.
Yeah.
That they've got a preconceived understanding of how it's going to go. My preps are always hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat them. Just they're so hard. I have to completely cane myself cardio-wise. I really do. My body doesn't like giving fat in the slightest. It likes to keep the muscle going, but it doesn't like to give up fat. I'm naturally just like, I mean, if I don't watch it, I could be a chunky little monkey. Anyway, that's me.
Monkey Steph.
I'm the heaviest I've ever been at the moment, but I'm happy with that. So yes, you have this preconceived notion, and then say it's been a real breeze, and you've got down there and it's just been easy peasy and things have been happy, and then the next time it comes around and it's like my prep that I've just explained, you're going to get like a massive shock. And then the opposite way around as well. Like trust me, I'd love my next prep to go easy. I've kind of got a feeling it won't, though, because it's just because you do learn. Like, I mean, I've got the measure of my preps now. Some have been a wee bit easier than others, but I still have to do what I need to do to get ready. You know what I mean?
And that's, I guess, almost a sort of side tangent to having the scale weight. And if it doesn't go down, if you're not monitoring that, you wouldn't know, but it does need to go down. And I think sometimes people can't quite grasp that it is something that needs to reduce. It's as simple as that. It's not like we're just saying, weigh yourself, have a negative affiliation with it, feel like shit about it all the time. It's a true measure of what is happening with your body. Yes, it fluctuates, but it's such a good tool.
Well, yeah, and it's like you've just said, if we take all of the kind of things that could be variables as to why it doesn't drop or why it goes up, science dictates that to get to a lower weight, you have to lose weight. You have to. It's the total simplicity of do more, eat less, get a result. And that's essentially it, with a lot of like playing with nutrient timing and everything as you go along the way. But it's that.
As simple as that. And I guess with experience, I don't know about yourself, Steph, but I've accepted that, like I mentioned earlier, I get on the scales, I see a number and I put that in my tracker.
Yeah.
That's the number. Over the week, Stephen sees 7 days worth. We take a weekly average. If it's going down on a weekly average, even like you said earlier, by 0.2, then it's still going down.
It's still going down, especially at your time. And I'm just looking on my own phone here. I don't know if you have a weight tracker on your phone.
Yeah, I tend to use my Fitbit and then I just transfer it over to my spreadsheet that I send Stephen.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to just show you something here. So I have
like your off season, I guess.
This is my off season bad boy, So I'll show that. I know obviously a lot of people will be listening, but if anybody's watching, you'll see it. It's just a really easy, don't know if you can see that, weight diary. You see that?
Okay. Yeah, no, I've never seen that before.
Okay, so it's just called Weight Diary. You can find it's free. But what's really cool about this is it gives you these lovely graphs. Actually, I'll just get up.
So is yours over a 7-day average, or how do you?
So I can do it over like a 1 week or 6 month or a 2 year or a 3 year. average.
And it just gives you a whole graph.
Yeah, and it just shows me graphs and then statistics. So it gives me my graphs. Oh, that's over 6 months. Oh dear.
Off season.
But this here is on here, yeah, lightest and then my heaviest. And it shows my trajectory over 6 months of how much I've lost, 3 months, 1 month. Really awesome little free piece of kit. And it also then gives you references to like your BMI. Not that that really matters for the contest prep client, but maybe for the lifestyle client. But like, it's a really, really good me tool. And this is super helpful because it's a little tracker for me. I can use it whenever I want. I'm the same as you, Sarah. I get up in the morning. I mean, I don't do it at the moment because I'm not tracking weight at the current second, but when I'm in prep, it will be every, Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, and then I'll up it if I want to. And then, yeah, it's a number. I don't attach an emotion to it. It's just a number. I know it will change next week as long as I stick to the plan, as long as I'm doing what I need to do. It will eventually change, but it's having that confidence in knowing in the weeks that are maybe a plateau or a little bit up, that it's not breaking the bank in the overall picture. And that's
also, I think it's remembering that, like you just said there, it will go down. And if it doesn't, that's why your coach will either, make amendments to your nutritional training. And, it's literally as simple as that. Like you say, there is so much science to it, but there's also a very simplistic rule there. If things don't happen, you change what you're doing.
Yeah, you take some food out, you add more cardio, you change the programming so it might be more volume based, you might change the intensity of your training. Like there's so many different variables that coaches can use to then help weight bump along if it needs to.
I don't know about you, but the first prep I did, I definitely used to think, oh no, if my scale weight doesn't go down, that means Stephen's going to take my food.
Yeah.
And I'd be thinking, oh my God, what can I do to get this scale weight down? But then as you go on, you realise,
yeah,
if your scale weight don't go down, then you're going to need to change your food or your training. What other tools so we've mentioned measuring and photos. Is there anything else you like to rely on for tracking progress?
Yeah, sometimes I like to rely on digestion. So I like to know like how regular somebody is. Sleep patterns really help too, because it's an overarched data, isn't it? Like the kind of things I like to see are your measurements, your photographs, of course, your averages and weight. I like to understand how digestion is playing a role. I like to see how well we're sleeping, because those sorts of things will help then see how we can help weight loss actually be a little bit more like your response to the weight loss process can be a little bit better by managing these other things. So it's not so much an indicator of the exact look, but it's how do we make sure that what we're asking the body to do is in a perfect environment for it to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as perfect as it can be within your lifestyle, I guess.
Yes, exactly. I think such a huge part of this, of course, is the psychological aspect. And that's the bit I find is what people struggle with the most. It's not the fact that the weight eventually comes off, because it does. If you're doing what you need to do, it does. If you're working with a coach, it does, but it's the emotional regulation around the weight itself and how you manage yourself around tracking it and being okay that sometimes you're going to get on that scale. And it's like, I know you'll have probably been like this as well, Sarah, where you're stood in the bathroom, your kit's off, you've just been to the bathroom and you're like,
and you literally think, oh, for God's sake, when I look down, please let it go in the right direction.
Literally got everything crossed.
And I literally have to laugh now if it doesn't, because otherwise I'll cry, because it's like, okay, it's a number.
Yeah, exactly. To the point where you're taking your bauble out your hair. That might weigh something. I better put it over here.
No, that is such a good point. Like, you do start thinking, surely I could get another 0.1 of a kilo off here. And it becomes this like absolute, mental torture. And in the past, I've had days where my whole day is ruined from 5:30 a.m. because the scale weight hasn't gone how I wanted it to, and it's not conducive to a normal life, is it? I'm not saying prep's normal, but if you let the scale weight affect your day every day, it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Hugely. And I mean, there are some odd occasions, right? Like where you might, like, let's take a month, and for those 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, you've been kind of maybe 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, down, and then come week 4, suddenly you bolt up 1.5 kilo, right? That happens. It happens.
Such a mind warp.
But it's not real reflection. You cannot gain that much fat if you're sticking to your plan in that time. And that's where you kind of have to come in and go, on those extreme moments, which they do happen from time to time, and it's usually correlations. If I take just females, it's usually correlations around that time of the month, which is of course another thing we didn't mention. But yeah, the time of the month, hormones are all erratic, body water's all out. You might be somebody, I'm this person that when it comes around to that time of the month, I tend to hold a lot. So for me, I've recognized it now that I do potentially go up 2 kilos. Some girls don't. Some girls only go up, point whatever, and it doesn't affect them. But if that happens once in a while, don't panic. Don't hit the panic button and go out and buy yourself a donut. It's not going to help. Like,
it's going to make it worse.
Yeah, it does happen every now and again. And I think it's very easy to sit here and say, don't stress and everything, because I've been there and we've all been there. But then it is getting back to basics and being realistic. And if you do have a wobble, sit down with yourself and maybe just go, right, okay, it's not the result I wanted this week, but I've got to look at the variables and what might have been causing it. If I am really confused, talk to your coach. If you can kind of work it out, and like you say, don't beat yourself up and make it ruin the rest of your entire week or your day or whatever else. Put it aside, crack on with what you're doing, and
keep the plan.
It will continue to happen. It's not up to you, it's up to the body. The body's going to tell you what's going on. And then
I don't know about you, something that's just sprung in my mind. I now get, after leg day, I weigh more.
Yeah.
But when my first couple of seasons, I didn't have this. I used to lose weight after a leg day. But Stephen said, I guess probably training intensity's gone up, the load I lift. Actually, the inflammation from doing something like legs can easily cause a spike in the scales. I didn't believe it at first, but even that.
Yeah, if you think about this, like the 2 biggest muscle groups are your legs and your back. If you go away and your legs are half your body, right? You go away and you absolutely thrash them, and like go back to that, you're holding any inflammation or subcutaneous fluid between the skin and the muscle, and you're maybe, it's maybe really hot as well, and it's maybe like, maybe you're not as hydrated that day. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Like that would be that would definitely be a consideration as to why weight might fluctuate the day after or a few days after.
It's just I just never equated it to that before, and I think the more and more you can notice trends as well, that could be something for people to think about. If every Wednesday your weight goes up and you train something on a Tuesday, and that's a direct correlation, then maybe for you have some inflammation on that day. If you travel a lot, if I stay away for a weekend, normally I come back and the Monday and Tuesday I'm carrying a bit more weight because it's different environment and maybe my sleep's affected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, even talking about that there with sleep being affected, a pattern I recognize with myself, and I don't know if anybody else gets it, I kind of call restless legs or dead leg syndrome after my leg sessions, even now in my off season. And it's like a foreboding sense that it's coming. It might not be till mid into the night after I've done maybe a really major leg session or the day after, and I cannot sleep for the life of me. I've just got restless, achy legs from the recovery process that's going on. And that's a real pattern that I've picked up through my training. It's a great piece of advice, is tracking patterns. Because if you can track some patterns, you can then make direct, realistic correlation with a weight change. It's a really, really good thing. And this is why I obviously mentioned that there's things like sleep and digestion. If you're passing stool regularly through the week and your fiber intake is good, we're not holding on to any necessary garbage in the digestive tract that may cause inflammation and may cause obviously retention of weight. That's one good tracker, that if you're regular, that's really good. You want to be regular through a prep. You want to try at least.
God, that would be bloody wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, wouldn't it? It's a big,
Oh,
you know what, see with females though, and especially with my clients, it's a big point of conversation is being regular. And I've had to do a lot of changing to people's fibre in their plan to help them be more regular, because we have a lot more problem with that than the guys do. Guys tend to be like straight plain sailing a lot of the time.
it's funny that it's hard to get your head around, even, the menstrual cycle is an obvious one, but something like that, you wouldn't think would be that different amongst humans, but actually it is.
Yeah, and it's just, I guess as well, like our anatomy is slightly different placed. A lot of females around that time of the month, we don't talk about this a lot. A lot of females get backed up, and we have to, talk about digestion around that time of the month, which isn't particularly nice. But yeah, there's all these things that have to be sort of put into play, because if you get on the scales and it's up, you haven't gone to the bathroom for maybe 2 days. That's quite a good indicator of why it might be up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But when
But
you're in prep in particular, you're not as objective as maybe you
you
could.
don't think about these things like at all. Like you just don't. You just go, shit, I mustn't have trained hard enough, or oh, I mustn't have done enough, or why is my body not responding? We automatically put the blame on us when actually the body's maybe just got a few other things going on that we're not thinking about. So some considerations, I think, just being a little bit more aware of yourself helps just manage your emotional side of tackling weight loss or weight gain. Yeah.
And the support of a coach, for me, I can't express enough how the support of having Stephen to talk about this with has changed my whole interpretation of weight loss and monitoring my progress. In essence, I'm not prepared to put my life on hold because the scale weight hasn't gone down for one day. I just don't want to do that anymore. It's not functional as a happy individual. It's not. You're literally basing your happiness on what a number presents to you that morning. And I did it for years, honestly. It would ruin days and weeks on end, and I got to a point where I thought no. And it's definitely, for me, my biggest bit of advice is to try and work with someone or yourself, or if you haven't got a coach, look online, reach out to people like us, other people in the community, just try and understand how you as an individual can digest what's happening with scale weight and be a bit more objective about it.
Totally. I mean, somebody said something to me like a few years ago and it stuck with me, which was, it was along the lines of, your scale isn't going to cheer for you at the end of the week when you've finished all your workouts and you've eaten all your food and everything else. It's not going to cheer for you all the time. It's going to throw up a few challenges for you, which you might not be able to explain. And that's okay. But it's, if you go onto the scales with a balanced mindset that this is just, it's not a reflection of the output, it's a reflection of kind of what my body is trying to tell me and what's been going on and everything else, you'll find it a little bit easier. But if you know that the overarching plan that you're currently sitting on is you're eating less and you're doing more, science tells us you have to lose weight. It's as simple as that. It can't not happen unless there's something wrong with that equation.
Medical, unless it's a medical condition potentially, but your coach would hopefully help you. If you've got data, you can investigate it. If you're shying away from the scales because you don't want it to have such a detrimental effect, it's hard. It takes out quite a big link into investigating it further if you're not losing weight.
Exactly. And I mean, there's of course medical situations there that would be a different topic of conversation with weight. But I think it's all relative, isn't it? It's all about making sure that you feel you have the support network around you to talk about that, so that you don't go down that route of now just kind of hating on yourself and ruining your enjoyment of life because your weight isn't doing what you wanted to do that week.
And managing those expectations. So before we wrap up, always mentioning that if anyone's got any questions on this sort of stuff, we're so open to just delving into these topics, but then also when we go into future pods, bringing up stuff that people have maybe heard on a past pod that we could expand on, or anything that's snap something inside people that are listening that they think, I really want to know a bit more. It would be great to get people messaging in and letting us know. And your favorite and my favorite, share on your Instagram story.
Yes.
Get the word out.
The stories are where it's at.
Yeah, it's just such an easy way to share stuff, and you know, you can reach so many more people and they can just maybe come across it, and then that could help one more person in our community, and that is what we're all about.
Yeah, 100%, and hopefully some of this has been useful for the listeners.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So as always, a pleasure. And if anyone does want to reach out to me, it's Sarah Parker Hatchard on the gram.
Yeah, and Steph Noble Figure Pro, or check me out over on Pro Prep Coaching. That's where you can see all the good people doing the weight loss stuff.
And you can join the team.
Join the team. Yeah. But no, it's a really good topic of conversation, one that a lot of people I think struggle with. And so if any listeners as well have any key tips on how they feel like they manage the emotional versus, you know, physical realms of weight loss, that would be interesting to hear as well. So drop us a comment if we've missed anything.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Any information sharing is perfecto. Cool. So we will speak to everyone next week, but for now, goodbye.
Bye.